Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode. An empathy that changed your hidden face. And I thought about talking about a new concept, something I've noticed, something that for a while I've noticed but I couldn't give a perfect metaphor for. There's moments that the human being, the inner realms, sets an expectation for the outer realms. And when that expectation is not met, when the inner realms feels its work is disturbed, whether this is the inner realms are starting their work from the beginning of the day, whether it's someone who is like starting to say something, let's say for example, imagine somebody's explaining to you something and midway you interrupt them and for example they have to reset, they have to restart. And so I've noticed something happens in the efforts of people's inner life to step outside, and if it is successful, there is something of a sort of rage. Now let me tell you what I mean by this. I mean that we don't see it, but I feel we set on fire. That anytime we don't see it, we don't see visually, but there's been moments where, at least in my experience as one human being, I have felt the inefficiency of the stepping out of the inner realms into the outer realms lead to a sort of flame. Do you know? And it's an analogy of burning in your own burning in front of the failure of your own expectations. Now there was this show which was before I get into the flame idea, I gotta give a shout out to this show, because this show, the name was Blue Exorcist, I think. It was this Japanese show, and in it there was it was a very strange narrative. It was like a Japanese world development of religious ideology. And so what it was that there was a character, and this character suddenly realizes that there is blue flames. He's giving off these blue flames when he gets angry or enraged, and he realizes that he's the spawn of chaos or something. There's something like that in the story. It's like the story is not a common, it's a bit of a not for the faint of heart kind of story. But the idea of it was that when the character went towards chaos or deception or accepted its true nature, the character would in some sense be lit with blue flames. And there was a scene in this show where a character comes up and says to this character who has this, unholy power, of these blue flames that just, rekindle around him. And there's another character, I forget their names. Yeah, I definitely forget their name. Yukio? I don't know. But anyways, there's this one character that looks at this character which has these blue flames and says, hey, watch out, those blue flames can kill people. Can hurt people, sorry, not kill, can hurt people. And so the character goes into this deep contemplation that something that is emanating from him that he is unconscious of can hurt others, And so I have had this feeling, especially when I get irritated, annoyed, or something where it feels like the person has stole something from their own moment. That's the thing about anger and rage, that is not worth it. You see, there is sometimes an anger that I would say it's necessary to spill out in the outer realms, For example, if you saw a spherical sort of sphere around you, and if that sphere was invaded, then it would be a sort of a justification for the anger, a sort of resistance. But anger or emotions that don't need to step out, they in some sense, I feel, burn the person. So if like, let's say somebody punched you and you don't get to punch them, there's that burning inside you, right? So, you know, so there is, or it could be anything. Somebody said something, you didn't get to say something back, and it's like there's that fire inside, right? And it's a sort of release of attained pressure. So we don't seem to notice it, but the way we communicate, the way we are as a being, it can lead to a sense of release, or it can lead to tension, to more pressure. There has been moments in my life where the moment was giving me clear signs, like intuitive signs. Stop your state of mind, stop your state of mind. And I remember just after a couple, I could tell you, like, just life teaches you quick sometimes, you know. I realized there is some energetic states that are not worth doing anything. That the fire has to be extinguished in the inner realms, and empathy helps that. You see, there's something that I have not seen it in a religious, sorry, I've not seen it in a secular community. I've seen it in a religious community in my childhood. And the difference is that in monotheistic religions, not polytheistic is different, but monotheistic religions, Abrahamic religions, there is something where, because nobody is in charge, because an invisible ultimate creator force is in charge, people have a simplicity to be, it's easier for them to be humble when they are not the host. You see, that means when you're like the host of your home, it's not a time to be humble. That means not to act like a guest in your own home. But I'll say, we are multidimensional beings. And this multidimensionality arises from how we move and how we generate any sort of migratory phenomenology. There has been moments in my life where I will be honest, I have felt as if my heart has been absent. There's been times where I felt like a robot. Like an android, you know? just part of the moment. There is no motivation from the inner. But there has been times where there has been that motivation for the inner, you know? And one of the biggest teachings, I actually this was a teaching really my father passed down to me. And I was asking about this phenomena of love. That means, in some sense, I was asking my father, what do you think love is? You know, now that you know you've gone through this life, what do you think? And my father gave me an answer, which it's like I hadn't seen. This whole time I've been in these talks saying that we are an antenna, the brain is an antenna, but I did not treat love as a signal. You see, I would say this is the biggest realization I've had on the idea, that it is something that comes on its own. That means you cannot really love someone if you don't love them. You know what I mean? It's like you cannot act like you love them, you know? That it's like a signal from within. It's something that arises from within. Your openness to the world, you know? So how does this all relate? Well, the first way it relates is that I gotta turn down the volume. How loud is this? Okay, if the music is too loud, I trust that the audience will let me know. So, questions arise where how does empathy fit into the next phase of human evolution, and what happens to a hidden face? You see, when we say we have a hidden face, I'll be honest, when a person speaks, they cannot say everything they are seeing. So I would say every time I come to give a talk from my inner landscape, maybe 40% of it I can share. You know, a lot of the inner landscape is like multiple rivers moving at the same time. So imagine your memories are mini films. They're like short films. Imagine your memories are like Oscar-winning short films. You know, but your name is Oscar. So you are seeing these, so sometimes when I speak, I see multiple short films, then I have a choice. And what's fascinating is that we haven't noticed this. The educational system is in some sense feeding people something very slow. It's as if people are ready to drive a Ferrari, but the educational system is giving them a tricycle, you know? And they're like, what is this circus act? But, it's like, I didn't know the educational systems are for entertainment. They're preparing you for entertainment. Who knew? There is a hidden face. Everybody has a hidden face. And that face is not a physical face. It is how their eyes have opened to the moment. And you could be a very liberated being and in some sense not have one type of way you're looking at life all the time. You know, you could be very free. You know, that's what freedom means. Freedom doesn't mean you are God. Freedom means that regardless of what is in front of your eyes, the natural being continues its journey, its emergence. You know, on one level, sure, I can say, okay, every day we're getting closer to the end. You know, I can feel like I'm walking to the ending of my body. But at the same time, the question comes, why was your mind here? Why are you watching your life through your eyes? And so comes the mystery of the hidden face. That means, can you imagine being a human being and suddenly realizing, I realized this in 2011, it was one of the most intense moments of my life. Where I was born in 91, in 2011, I realized I don't know the I. I don't know. The I thought doesn't know. The I thought is just a response to the stimulus of the moment. And what's fascinating is you cannot have empathy if you see yourself first. If you see yourself first, you'll have empathy on yourself. You know, let's say people who are very cruel, who don't help the world, who are just taking and holding, you know. It's as if they care for themselves than the world. That is it. The only reason there is war, the only reason there's inefficiency is because the individual cares for itself, or for its group self, whatever that is. Family, immediate family. It's like so many people, they care for their children, they buy the best thing for their children, yet they don't give a shit about their grandchildren. They don't give a shit about their great grandchildren. They're like, okay, I'm alive now, let's just have what's around me look alright, that's good enough, you know. But there needs to be an honesty of minds, you know. To be honest with the moment means to accept it for what it is. That's really honesty. You know, that means it's like, let's say you love someone, they don't love you, you know, or someone loves you, you don't love them, you know. And so the only thing left to make the moment true is being real with the moment. And being real with the moment means accepting what is unknown and what is known as is. And that was the thing. I think people are conditioned, maybe even through religious thought or other schools of thought, to love a world, but they don't look at the world first. They're loving the world they see, not the world that is actually there. You know? And so this is where a sort of non-ideological empathy of an unknown witness can only change your hidden face. That means it's like, I remember, as long as when I thought, I'm like, okay, my real name is Amin. So I thought, okay, you know, I'm Amin, I'm gonna go do this, I'm gonna go do that, yeah. You know? You know, and I had this lockdown on my inner realms, had like my inner realms felt like an architect, and I was like, yeah, this is how life should be. And little did I know, I was going through this life not seeing it. This is why when I speak about the abstract, I know that from the moment I speak, I know I am being a fool. Because we accept only reality. Not realizing we imagined reality into its stable position as it is now. So right now we are left as an object subject, and we have to treat no longer an objective self but a subjective self. That means people care for their objective self. They go to the gym, but how many people actually have questions of about how their own mind is existing to them? You know? How many people care for their mind's life? To care for your mind's life doesn't mean just want something from the future and go towards it. You know? That means in some sense, like, there is another life we have to live while we're living our physical life. And during the development of the mind, so think of the mind as poetically, the body, the biological body is a mountain. You know, imagine the physical world is a mountain. And this mind is trying to climb it. And based on its decisions, it takes a step towards the peak of the mountain, a singularity, or in some sense, it falls and falls towards the dual, you know? Recently, I felt my antenna, this antenna that I am, biological antenna, I felt it catch on fire. And I literally, for a moment, before I was about to do something intense, I just stopped. When I say intense, guys, intense to me. You know, I'm a very passive person, trust me. But it was something intense, and I felt the flames. I felt the inner flames. I literally felt my inner realms were agitated by how the outer realms were happening, and the inner realms wanted from that intense state, you know, from that burning state respond. And I managed to just stand there and be like, what's the point of me getting angry? You know, every person I'm getting angry, when it comes the moment they're taking their last breath, I would only cry for my own anger. Let's burst out. You see, there's this thing they say, everybody's fighting a battle you cannot see. That's where the hidden face is. That is what people's true nature are, you know. For example, you can test situations. I often do this, you know. I learned this as a technique really from my uncle. Evidently, I think he was showing off, but but I think it was, you know, it wasn't actual. But he was saying he could play like chess with 3 people eyes closed, you know. And this was years ago. you know. And I remember I could never, I'm pretty good in chess. I couldn't beat him. Only once in an airplane. We were on an airplane where he was jet lagged and I managed, he made a mistake and I won the game, you know. But he told me something that sometimes in chess, you're required to make a move that doesn't make sense. Why? To confuse the opponent. Because it's a setting. Let's say it's a challenge. You know, it's a clash of forces. And so what does that mean? You make a chess move and the opponent is like, what the, like the opponent can't understand what you're doing, you know? And yet, based on their response to that chess move that had no value, you get to see their inner realm, the inner realm of the person you're playing chess with, you know? That means if you show, for example, you care for adding to a moment, and for example, someone just cares taking from the moment, and that changes, you know, things. We are temporary, yet we have eternal dreams and ambitions. The subjective eternal, the inner realms, expectation of the outer realms, the mind cannot know death. The mind can only know birth. The body can, in some sense, break. I was speaking to my brother, I have a twin brother, and he was sharing with me a view from Sri Ramana Maharshi. And Sri Ramana Maharshi is this very profound yogi. And Sri Ramana Maharshi says that the body is not sentient, you know, and the soul is non-dual. The soul is never in the room. The body's like the room. And so the mind is what is here. That means everything that you're hearing me say, the body is just stuff, the soul is just the whole moment witnessing, and the mind, it is the mind, it is the mind's life. So I'm pretty much the person who's put his mind's life online. You know, you're welcome, cyberspace. So that's the thing, that the mind, when I say it always begins, because it doesn't know its end. If the mind really felt to itself it had died, like for example, you slept and you woke up, the mind wouldn't restart. Do you know? And it could be that the mind is an hallucination between two realities. I mean, that's the mystery, right? From a materialistic lens, electrons are hallucinating humanhood after a very long time. From the immaterial lens, electrons are the imagination of the unknown. It's too unique what's happening in the cosmos for us to be alone. You know, there's too much happening, even though people are like it's empty everywhere. But it's too much design, too much unique design prior to the human. How loud is this song? Oh my god. it's like a question comes, is the mind here? Or is the mind generating here? And if we are generating location, that technically means we are not creatures in location. Our minds are fields. They are not they're not like contained in stuff. The inner realms can be navigated by the presence of attention. The presence of attention is realized when the personality notices the inevitable void. So when your personality as a human being really looks at the world and notices a temporary ending, it will fear the future to get to know its own mind now, you know? When the mind begins to speak, I would say that it took me a very long time to be able to phrase it in this way, but I would tell you, you must serve. It's the infusion of these two quotes that are like perfect. George Patton, he says you must serve before you can, you must serve before you can command. You must serve before you command. And then there is another sentence, as something the sages would say, the mind is a lousy master, but it is a great servant. So technically we have to serve the unknown, so then the unknown serves us. You see? But that unknown is not some theosophical, esoteric, oh my God, what kind of face is it behind the veil? You know? That unknown is that. It is the unknown. It is the unknown X variable in the mathematical equation that is the same mystery of the blank page where the whole equation is written on. That's the power of the unknown. It has a permission to be infinite. But the known doesn't have permission, and it has sculpted a setting for itself where it can't be infinite, you know? I remember in certain yogic texts, there was this view that some yogis, but they would do yoga and all this unique way of living, but they would live for like 400 years. Now that's unfathomable. Like, we don't believe that as human beings. We don't even know if that's in the past, if that was possible. You know, like something that a lot of people perhaps may wonder about is that could time, imagine like the world is a TV and we changed the time settings so that when history went forth, time became faster. You know? Or it could have been the other way, actually. It could have been that time was faster, and the more we're going to the future, it's slowing down for us. It could be that. There's so many mysteries that are holding our world that you can say no single branch of academia has access. It's as if unless university departments realize they are one brain, and different parts of the brain required to communicate with one another. The neurons will have nowhere to go and therefore render themselves void. Let us create a new angle where we look at life and we say intelligence has two dimensions: a conscious dimension and unconscious dimension. Intelligence, we can say, in its simplest definition, is response to intelligence outside of self. Response to the unknown, let's say it that way. Intelligence is in a known way responding to an unknown way, the unknown. So intelligence is, before I go into the conscious, okay, we can even say it. And so right now, I'm going to use myself as a, let's make it easier. Let's say person A. Person A is standing in the moment. Person A has consciousness. This consciousness is not all-pervading, but it is like a candle's glow. So your consciousness is like how your brain is lighting up the room. Now, how your intelligence is lighting up the room. Now, when we go to the unconscious, this has to do with through the conscious noticing the unconscious. That means first we require to realize we're intelligent in a physical position, then it can be another, That means the idea of soul or mind, you gotta believe there's a body, then be like, okay, this body is being moved by a mind. And you know, you gotta believe it. So in some sense it becomes the prerequisite to the soul is familiarity with the mind. The prerequisite to the mind is familiarity with the body. So we are born from the body's position, familiar with our outer realms. We become familiar with our inner realms, then we become familiar with how the whole moment is just the whole moment. That means existentially we're equal. That means everybody is being energy right now. We're just energy moving. You know, it's like a tag. Worlds lead to selves, and selves lead to worlds. All I was trying to say with this intelligence, conscious, unconscious thing is that rather than being a snapshot photo, it's dynamic. So that means life has an unconscious life as much as it has a conscious life. If you comprehend this unconscious life to be inseparable from the conscious life, you in some sense attain nirvikalpa samadhi. This nirvikalpa samadhi means that you, as a drop, realize the river. So technically in Vedic thought, nirvikalpa samadhi is a samadhi where any lifetime the being attains it, the next lifetime their liberation, their enlightenment is automated. It's automatic. It doesn't matter if they do something or not. Their eyes have seen. Their eyes, the eyes of the eyes have seen. So it's a the conscious life, all you need is pretty much just identification with some sort of individualism, and it's easy to navigate. In the unconscious life, when it becomes the mysteries of what is the mind doing here, you know, that means the body, like question answered, we know its outcome. But the mind, do we know the outcome of the mind? That's the question remaining. And so, perhaps the outcome of the mind is to realize it never was the mind. In the same way that we wonder if there is to be something continuing after the physical transition, that means there wasn't just the body, there was a mind, there was a greater onion layer of awareness, let's say. And so let's say from the mind's activity, now the mind is wondering, am I a universal memory? Oh my God. And then the mind realizes no. And so when you step out of space and time, you actually become, it's another word for timeless. You become a mindless being. You know? Literally, it's like less the mind. You know, what's missing from the picture is that there is no story, because the storyteller was here first. The storyteller is not a truth outside of you, it is how your eyes are open. I'm telling you, there's a feeling that sometimes you can only get it alone with yourself. That means think of life, it is true, we are social creatures, but at the same time, we have to learn to navigate in a solo way. That means we have to learn to walk alone. We have to learn to walk with others, you know. And to walk with others, I would recommend the more people are around people, be less of an I thought, be more of just a momentary watcher. The more you are an I thought, the more suffering comes, you know. Time is a noble lie. The noble lie was a concept by Plato, where it was as if, like, an example would be like if there is, let's say in a country or some village back in the day was at siege, and everybody in the village was gonna, you know, like in medieval times, that we're all gonna die. The father just, you know, I don't know, let's say there was, in a mythical context, there was a dragon who was about to come and burn this whole village, and the father just saw the dragon in the sky, saw his son, and then covered his son's eyes and started singing to his son, you know, or something like that, you know, as if something, it's a lie, it's an illusion, because the being is not ready for the truth, you know. It's not a dangerous illusion. It's an illusion with a bit of truth to it. Now, this idea, I think time is the same way. Time is covering our eyes from how unknown and mysterious this world is. And through our fixed definitions of time and space, just treating it as something linear, we have classified, we have in some sense gotten rid of the idea of imagination. And let me tell you, it was such an excellent ploy, how imagination was rendered separate from reality. It was so diabolic, yet it's like if you were a designer, you would see geometry to it. It's as if time, the idea of time that just goes forth, this was first imagined. There was no idea of time. Imagine there was just some guy named Tim, okay? And Tim was walking around, you know, and suddenly was like, yo, what happens if I add an E to my name? You know, and suddenly, let's say, the concept of time somehow came about, okay? A lot of people don't know, when you go further back in history, even when you go closer to the ancient Greeks, they had two types of time. But anyways, so I'm saying time is a concept where first there was no reality, there everything was imagination, you know. Then we held something in this room of mind generation, imagination, as still, and we called that reality, right? So I'm telling you, linear time is as much imaginary as your whole imagination, by the mere presence of your attention keeping ideology fixed. I'm saying that time is as imaginary as our imagination. Reality is imaginary and imagination is real. That's where it comes, you know. It's like it's not something to classify. Reality, it's like you can never tell. It's like a yin yang symbol. You can't tell if it's a white circle first, or it's a white circle overlaid with a black circle, or a black circle overlaid with a white circle. You can't tell. You know, so we have done something where we have locked ourselves in a material room, not realizing that we are way more multidimensional than words could ever promise us. And so that this renders us as explorers. There's no the game of belief and disbelief is over. The language wars, you can stay in it if you like, but I'm telling you now, it is just novelty's permission to enter a world that it can help. You see, that means it's like first you get your emotions I would say how would I say? You make your emotions your allies, then you make, you know, in quotations, your thoughts your allies, you know, and then you make yourself your ally, and then there is no self. It's just the whole realm, all the dimensions of your conception in some sense have found one moment to go forth in, you know. And one can never really know what the purpose of having purpose is. Every word can be countered back into the point. That's just the nature of language. Language never could hold truth, but it has acted for so many years as if it can. You know, it is the eyes of the living being which are the living truth. Somewhere in the middle of nowhere, a torch was, a genetical torch began being passed down. And this genetical torch had no control. I wouldn't say no control, but had no idea why it was continuing. That means we evolved before we had ideas on our evolution, on reality and all this, right? Isn't that phenomenal? We were without reason an evolutionary phenomenon, right? And then we evolved to a point where we're like, yo, is that a brain that just, you know, happened, you know? And so in some sense it became a sort of consciousness of what was building up this whole time. You know, I feel in the mornings when I wake up, when I just look in the moment, having no opinion on anything, it feels like I am in a new moment of the world again, you know? And I would say at the same time, I would say my body feels new too. There's something about sleeping and waking up where it's been too long of a gap with before conscious, some sort of conscious outer realm attention. It's as if the attention, let's say you were, okay, here, I'll give you an example. Let's say you left a candle, and you shouldn't do this, you should blow out candles before you sleep, but let's say you left the candle and a candle lit, and you know the candle was gonna melt, and the candle would melt to a point where nothing would happen in some sense. But you slept, and in your whole time you were sleeping, you closed your eyes and you were just like, all right, I'll have faith in the candle. You know, you know, nothing's gonna happen. You know, and so the person sleeps. Now imagine your attention has been on the candle and you suddenly sleep. You know what that means? That means it was like this. Poetically, you can say like there was someone watching a film projected from a projector onto a wall, and suddenly the projector stopped. The person is still staring at the blank wall. So really, I feel what happens is that it's based on who you are and how you use your breath to take your attention more into the outer or into the inner. You know, for example, when I sleep, I renounce the world pretty much. You know. So, it's as if the attention from the outer realm slowly, like a fishing rod, reeling back in, you know, or like a vacuum cleaner cord where you pull it back and it just goes, it just goes forth, yeah. So it's like literally, it's like the attention steps back in, and so it's this thing that I would tell you. Sometimes dreams are the impatience of the soul to live. The impatience of an unknown will. Because that's the hard problem of consciousness. We're like, why did we evolve to be conscious of what we are in such a way? Like we could have totally evolved in a way where the body could be in pain, but we could voluntarily shut it off. Like, think about it. We can close our eyes instantly. Imagine in an instant there could be a real, like, actual nervous system realignment. Your mind, your nervous system. You were like I don't know. You commanded your body not to feel pain, and your body didn't feel pain. Imagine. You know, imagine if we could do that. You know, I feel on some level the mind just echoes its instruction all over the place. The body feels it. So what some people may feel like the brain is, it could be the brain has an internal through the nervous system connecting, but I feel the brain is generating a spherical wave. This spherical wave, as it starts from the brain, imagine from a small sphere, and sphere just growing up, growing like a wave, it passes over your whole body. So your brain is scanning the body in two ways. Like, how genius is biology? Think about it. That we are literally doing what dolphins are doing, but with space, and we don't realize it. We're just dolphins on land. And some dolphins might be like, don't bring us into this, don't compare us to you, you know? Don't compare us to human beings, you know? Linear time is imagination that is playing the blame game with other imagination, reality. And so the mystery still stands, and what this means is that whether we can shut off pain or not, whatever like happens in the future. Let's say in the future, people like, I don't know, they change their body parts into, I don't know, technological replacements of their body parts, you know. At that point, we would have gone down to impurity, you know, impurity in accordance to the natural reference point. But of course, the human voice is a very small part of existence. I don't know how people have ever believed words. It's such a small chunk of life. Like, the intellect is like, it's a majority of its work is invisible. I could say that if I hadn't given these talks, it would be just like my inner realms would still have moved, you know. And they might not have moved in the same way as each talk being different, but I would say it's kind of like your mind is always moving, you know, and we think we wake up from the dream, but no, we travel outside of the dream. The dream is, your mind is endlessly simulating. And it's, I don't want to say endlessly simulating, but I want to say it's like the mind is doing something. Right now, as I'm speaking, my mind has invisible programs it's running, you know? Like just awareness to my biology, how comfortable I feel in the moment, my body's temperature, for example, the sounds I hear, you know, how as my breath moves, I notice where it goes. That's really the biggest thing. To become comfortable with your breath is like to become comfortable with how the attention leaves the body. Poetically, for the sake of having this somehow be shared in literature, the old soul leaves with the breath because there's no attachment to the body. The young soul has to still be in the body or has to respond to it. You see, it's the mind's life has been happening. If there is something after this life, it has been here from the beginning. That means it was a dimension always here. We hadn't found a way to engage it. You know, that means before we had the word three-dimensional, we had two-dimensional, you know? You know, it's like we got tired of looking at squares and so cubes arose. And so we're getting tired of looking at objects and subjects, and a collective experiential wind is approaching. You see, it's as if like there's, let's say you had three types of bodies, okay? Imagine and somebody, let's say you had three different types of bodies, and someone was like, oh my God, three different types of bodies, what are these bodies? You know? And the answer would be there is an individual body. Then there is the mind's life, the mind's journey. The mind is not plays with time. You could say infinity is the last attachment before the ultimate, you know. So you can say your body is finite, your mind is infinite. And the soul's body is oceanic, the mind's body is river-like. And this body, we see it here now. So that means we are experiencing life on a leaf level, the mind is experiencing it on a branch level, the soul is experiencing it in the roots where it goes in the soil and we cannot see it from the outer realms, only from the inner realms, only from the tree can see its own roots. You know? And so just clarity of vision, self-awareness, these eventually make you treat your own self differently. And the only way you can treat yourself differently is by being a new self on the house. how is a person updates if they are the same, you know. Communication can be similar. For me, communication, I haven't given a talk on just pure, like, how to communicate to people, like how to communicate as something for people, but I'll tell you, like, there is something that the less serious you take language, the more flexibility your own I thought gives you to see. So it's not just about like seeing it to you see it then believe it. Let's say you saw something, now you believed it. Now we're like, what do we do with the belief? Do you know what is the belief? That means people are trying to believe things. It's like, what are we believing in a changing world? Right? So this is where you can be as much as you want a statue of power, you know, in human history, but you will see you cannot. Because it's moving. The truths of the river are not the truths of the drop. The truths of the ocean are not the truths of the river. And the sky has a voice that cannot be heard on earth. Empathy is antenna through the framework of self. It's your honesty with your own memories. Because everybody experiences, it's like unconditional. Just like how I say apple, you know, for people when they hear the word apple, it's gonna cause their brain to generate something, right? An image. So people are gonna see maybe like, I don't know, someone listening who works in an apple orchard. I say apple, suddenly the image of the whole orchard comes to them or whatever, right? So the word evokes an image, right? So now we have to think that actual experiences in the space-time continuum also in some sense evoke something for the brain. So technically the brain is living a life, I shouldn't say brain, the being is experiencing one level of life, then experiencing that same level at a faster speed over it, and then beyond the faster speed is experiencing it as the world. So we think we're just being ourselves, but the brain is being the whole world, then the self, then cookie cutting a self out of it for you, right? Which you're treating as consciousness. But if you realize self and world are codependent, then you don't get caught in the games of creature, I shouldn't say creature, but in the games of your inner realm stop being a story, they start becoming an exploration. So your own honesty with the unknown will, let's say, bring a sincere resonance, and then from that sincere resonance, you will trust your eyes to have them open in you. So let's say somebody goes through an intense experience, right? And that experience evokes a sort of their psychology, a sort of their intensity, literally like a soldier who got, you know, I don't know, there was an explosion in the battlefield, the soldier got pushed back. That experience is defining the person, right? It's fascinating. All of knowledge is pretty much what are our eyes doing. I could say that in yoga there's 4 paths. There is Bhakti Yoga, the path of love, and the word yoga means union with the ultimate. So it's a revelation of how there was something here before you were, and now you've noticed it, realized it, right? So the way the person could get to this self-realization, ultimate self-realization, let's say, was that from the yogic standpoint, you started loving the world. You just started loving your moment, then love started becoming your teacher, you know? So the more gentle your soul is, I feel the more actually love is like opens the doors for you automatically. You know. So the Bhakti Yogi, pretty much another way it's been defined is that pretty much God comes and takes the hand of the Bhakti Yogi, like the Bhakti Yogi is like a little kid lost in a mall, you know. And God comes and takes the hand of the Bhakti Yogi and takes him to truth that way. You know, there was another way, which was karma yoga, and it's pretty much like rent a car, but you're renting your karma to get to the destination. Yeah. So at the end of any great work, if you're anybody listening to me, if you're a working man, the masterpiece of your work is how you let it go at the end. That's the cherry on the cake. You know. There's no such thing as goodbyes, there's just masterpieces finished. Masterpiece moments finished, you know? So in the path of excuse me. The path of karma yoga, this is where empathy can be a resolution. Either the karma selected, like an actual karmic yogic path continues, like you're a being that has work here. You're on this planet because you're here to do some work. You know, you can say it this way. You can say the Bhakti Yogi is a being on this planet to love, to emotionally serve the civilization. The Karma Yogi is, in some sense, you can say, physically serving the ultimate. So the Karma Yogi in the path of work, I feel this is if you've done a good job, you will know at the end, kind of ordeal. Now there was another type path of yoga. I believe it was the Raja Yoga. Guys, let me double check this. Pretty much, it's the path of knowledge, but I don't know. It's probably Raja Yoga. Raja should mean knowledge. Better knowledge. Okay. Sorry guys, just hold on. I'm gonna tell you the accurate thing. Come on, come on. Yeah, I think I was right, guys. Yeah. Bhakti Yoga, the path of love. Karma Yoga, the path of work. Raja Yoga, the path of knowledge. Jnana Yoga, the path of meditation. The path of meditation, you can say, is the backup. Anybody can do it if they feel they can't love the world. If you feel you can't love the world, if you feel you can't work in the world, if you feel you cannot you cannot attain knowledge in this world, then Jnana Yoga is your path. That means it's as if you require a different kind of mirror. If these are 4 kinds of mirrors, you're like a special being. You require the 4th mirror, Jnana Yoga. So, Raja Yoga, the path of knowledge, is what is really interesting is that there's a story that there were 4 yogis. There was a Raja Yogi, Bhakti Yogi, Karma Yogi, and Jnana Yogi. And these 4 yogis, they went to this temple and then it started raining. And they were arguing on the way to the temple. They were all arguing which one is right. The Bhakti Yoga was like, God's love is more pure than working in this world. You know, you work, you have an ego, in love you don't. And then the Karma Yogi is like, no, we need the ego. The ego is required for you to even have a temple to have love in. You know? And then in the middle of this, the Raja Yogi is like, hey guys, the picture is too big, relax. You know? And then the Jnana Yogi is like, no, all 3 of you are wrong. You need an actual specific path of meditation. You know, you need a sort of divine wind. You know, that means it's not any of those, right? So they're fighting. And then what happens is that when they get to the temple, it starts raining. While their conversation gets angry between these 4 yogis, it starts raining, and there's a statue of God there. That this statue of God is like the only shelter from the rain, but the only way these 4 can do it is that they put their backs on the only way they can literally stand the storm is they go on the, what do you call it? Their backs are pretty much to the statue, right? So all 4 of their backs are to the same statue, and yeah. Sorry guys, oh god, my attention's going somewhere else. So these 4 people, they're 4 yogis. Their backs are to the statue, and they literally are like very close to one another, all 4 of them. And suddenly God appears, you know, and all 4 of them are there, right? And God says, okay, you God just says, okay, you know. Pretty much the moral of the story is God appears and says, you 4 idiots finally realize you have to get together. And what that means is that a fulfilled life, as a very insightful man and yogi, mystic by the name of Sadhu, as Sadhguru says, to live a fulfilled life is to live a life to live its dimensions fully. And so, to be a social creature can mean navigation between these. And I feel an advanced civilization will focus on these 4 approaches. We have to build a civilization that if people actually choose to seriously advance themselves, it becomes really easy and efficient for them to do so. And I feel that we're on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Literally, we have to give ourselves direction, or there is no direction to anything, you know? So we have to create systems where human beings, the individual activity, the individual's efforts, and the collective's efforts are the same. Literally so easy, basic negotiation. You win, I win, it was a good deal, you know? But we need that now between human beings, how they're behaving in society and civilization. Like, can you imagine? We should have like such an honor pouring out in our civilization in the future, where if somebody says human beings are the problem on this planet, we should just literally stare at them and be like, how dare you dismiss yourself? You know? Because there is something. There is something. If we didn't have potential, I'd be like, I'd literally drop my pen before writing a single thing for my inner realms ever. But because there is a potential, because there is unknown factors, we can't just depend on how the past is telling us how everything's going to happen. Therefore, a dimension of exploration. Therefore, in order to explore, you got to enter the unknown. To enter the unknown, you can't be the same known. If you can't be the same known, technically you're selfless. If you're selfless, selflessness is novelty. If you are selfless, I will tell you, portals of novelty open instantly for you. It's literally like a signal thing, you know. The brain thinking like I am this is like, oh man, we went like the phone went into the parking lot and doesn't have signal. But the person being like, okay, I'm not this self in a changing world. How can I be one sense of self? Like the evidence of my memory is that I've been tunneling through senses of self. So how am I just one self? So the person does it just stays in this wondrous on a fascination with just being in an unknown world and exploring it. And I can tell you, it's like the whole point is inseparability. That means those who are bhakti yogis, they have actually, you could say they are mature, poetically more mature beings. Why? Because they have realized truth can be simple. Those who are in the karma yogis, they haven't realized truth can be simple, or they have realized there is more to see out of their work. Do you know? That means it's like some people come to the gym, just use the treadmill. Some beings come to the gym, they use the treadmill, but they also use everything else there. You know? You know, depending on their workout, you know? It's like karma yoga is pretty much the soul's workout, you know? So, um, the karma yogi is taking technically a longer way, right? So bhakti yogi, through love, realizes the inseparability between the individual known activity and the collective unknown activity, and it comes for the karma yogi through the work the karma yogi does and through trust. Karma yogis, you have to learn from trust in this life. You know, all dimensions, all paths of yoga require trust. Without trust, you can't technically do anything. But I'm saying karma yogi means trust in the movement of your whole moment. It's on that level. Now, Raja Yoga is the yoga of knowledge, right? So the yoga of knowledge really is very closer to, I would say, Jnana Yoga, because what it is it's coming from a question of your own fascination, you know? That means when I was younger, when I asked people how do I like know more, they were like, read books, right? That's what they would say. Now, if now that I could say I went through that terrible, not terrible, but very narrow advice, right? I realized that knowledge, first of all, has to do with questions. Questions that your own eyes have, not the eyes of others. That's when your true self develops. Your true actual character develops from solo moments of running into the battlefield of your own greatest questions of what is this. If you were like on a imagine a like Castaway the movie, right, situation. So now imagine 8 billion beings cast away on a rock in the middle of nowhere. You are one of those beings, right? And so if you were to think as if you just teleported here without any past, what great question would come that it would in some sense be the shoulder of the giant you're kind of going on. So you know, so I could say poetically something incredible about Raja Yoga. I could say, imagine first of all Bhakti Yoga. I said God comes and takes the hand of the Bhakti Yogi. Imagine instead of God, it's a giant. Now imagine for the Raja Yogi, God puts the Raja Yogi on his shoulder. The giant comes and puts the Raja Yogi, instead of holding the Raja Yogi's hand and just taking the Raja Yogi to where it needs to be, taking the Bhakti Yogi where it needs to be, holding the Bhakti Yogi's hand and taking, oh my god, taking the Bhakti Yogi in one, for the Bhakti Yogi, God is assisting the Bhakti Yogi. For the Raja Yogi, God is teaching the Raja Yogi. So God is putting the Raja Yogi on his shoulder, you know. And the Jnana Yogi is, I would say, this is for truly the culturally and socially unconditioned. It's extreme. It's an abandonment of the human ideal. In all those three, Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, something happens. The human, like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, the I thought becomes something like that. But in Jnana Yoga, it is like truth is not playing nice, but it's giving you truth. Because, you know, there is many mystics, their hearts have howled at the moonlight of a world beyond their eyes. There's a story that Papaji, this yogi, goes to Ramana Maharshi, Sri Ramana Maharshi. And actually, sorry, Papaji's on a mountain dancing, you know, like with the air, like, and Sri Ramana Maharshi comes and he's like, hey kid, what are you doing? And Papaji looks at Sri Ramana Maharshi, this really liberated sage, and says, I'm dancing with God. Krishna has come to me, I'm dancing with God right now, right? Like actually, in his, like as a person, he felt his eyes were open and the divine God had come to him and he was dancing. So he was literally saying something incredibly metaphysical to Sri Ramana Maharshi. Then Sri Ramana Maharshi says something to Papaji that literally, like, wakes him up from his dance with God. And Sri Ramana Maharshi says, a God that comes and goes is not the real God. Therefore, the point of it is that if it's still temporary, what progress was made? One must serve truth before they can command it. This doesn't mean truth is something specific. It means that we think there is truth because we have accepted the illusion before. You know, it was kind of like the same hysteria that from the Lotus Sutra angle of depiction of Buddha's passage, literally beyond Mahasamadhi, beyond this world, they were like, Buddha at the end of his life started freaking out. This is from the Lotus Sutra angle, you know. And why did Buddha freak out? All his disciples were like, Buddha, why now? You've been this next level, like, wave of peacefulness. Like, why are you freaking out right now? You know, and Buddha looks at his disciples and he says, I have made a mistake. And there's pure silence. And he says, we have all been enlightened from the beginning. That was Siddhartha's Bodhisattva ticket. Because the difference is, one has fear of outcome and fear of disaccord with divine, with the divine. But the Bodhisattva is the movement, is the unknown. That means the Buddha still thinks there is itself enlightenment, but the Bodhisattva is collective enlightenment. So the Bodhisattva sees the world enlightened before the person. This doesn't mean everybody's alive. This technically means that there are some truths that we chase for, yet they were there from the beginning. I think it's kind of cool. Anytime somebody gets angry, you know, let's create a sort of response to this. I don't know if it's gonna work, but for me, it had a certain result. For others, I don't know if it's gonna work. But let's say next time, wherever you are, you get angry, just become super still, literally like freeze yourself in time, as if you press pause in a video game, and literally envision flames. Literally imagine the more angry you get, you see any color flame you want. Imagine like, you know, you could change it. This is technically a visualization, right? But I'm saying visualize your anger, release it in the inner realms. That means, let's say the person got angry, wanted to, I don't know, throw something to the ground. Literally, the person suddenly midway holds the thing in their hand, stops throwing it, and in their inner realms, they're throwing like a bunch of the copy-paste version of that object into some abstract wall or whatever. So I'm saying like it's just that we can release the tension of life in the inner or outer, right? So if you want it to be in the inner, you gotta animate it. So I'm saying that it's like if a person gets let the flames settle, then move. So literally pause yourself like a video game. Envision in your inner realms as much flames, like, okay, go even, I don't know, saying it like anime level. Do you know what I mean? But uh, but I'm just saying it's like the mind's life can totally uh, serve the body's life, but the body must serve its own mind's life, and then the mind will give back to its body, poetically. And there is something with the antenna metaphor I can say before I end off, actually. The person always has a choice of how the inner realm phenomena, or as Immanuel Kant, this philosopher, called it, noumenon. Like we have in front of your eyes phenomenon, then we have noumenon, that which is real to the experiencer, you know. So technically, that was noumenon was Immanuel Kant's way of saying inner realms. Then. So study physics, experience metaphysics. Study physics for the outer realms, study metaphysics for the inner realms. really, guys, where I can lead everything when it comes to just explaining the human being is we get to the language threshold where it, in some sense, experience continues, but our conceptual, that we literally can experience something that we haven't given a word to. You know, I feel there should be this regulation that makes every person in school, before they can graduate high school, they have to create one word, right? They have to create a word which can enter the English language, you know. And they have to write, imagine all universities before they accept children, they're like, okay, let's see your creativity. You know, language has to evolve, let's see what you can do. And so how people create different words, or I created this concept, I call it letter linking. One day I hope it catches on, becomes official. But letter linking is, for example, let's say, um, let's say, ice, the word ice and the word emotion. So literally we can create ice emotion, you know, ice emotion as one word, okay? Ice emotion, you know, ice emotion. Like the motion of ice. Do you see what I mean? Like that's letter linking, where a letter from either the back, from one side of the word links with a letter from the other side. But all of this comes down to, because honestly I'm trying to explain Jnana Yoga this whole time. It's when your soul, it's when you watch the moment move as a whole soul, as like the whole. It's like being your moment and watching your mind, body, and what's moving. And so at that point, it's not even unknown witness anymore. The witness is like the edge of the bubble, and when you step out of it, it's just unknown. So that's from that unknown. The Jnana Yogi is the very rare being that I would say gets to actually experience in the inner realms divinity never revealed before. That means the Jnana Yogi's eyes actually are fearlessly vaster. So technically the Raja Yogi, the Raja Karma, all of them will eventually conclude the Bhakti Yogi. So if you go the path of knowledge, you're like, we gotta create a loving world so we don't destroy the libraries. You know, if you're working, if you're a Karma Yogi, you're like, okay, we gotta build something functional, we gotta have love. So technically the Raja and Karma Yogi, they will eventually conclude as the Bhakti Yogi. So technically, for the visible members of our civilization, it is technically, we hate our civilization now. We're gonna experience a version of it where we're gonna love it. You know? So, but anyways, there is mysteries to the world, and if everybody is an antenna, then we should use it. Technically, I see these talks as me just giving a feedback report, just reporting back to my species, okay, this is what's going on in the inner realms, how far I see it, you know. And it right now, the world may not care. Right now, we may still be caught in the object-subject tug of war, you know, which came first, you know. For Shakespeare, it was to be or not to be. For the mystic, it was to speak or not to speak. To put forth or not to put forth. Because honesty is unconditional. Technically, we are non-intelligent before we're intelligent. True honesty would make the person on some level, you remember your eyes no longer based on the inner realms movement. So think of it this way. right now when I'm speaking, like your physical body is somewhere, and you have simultaneously this somebody's listening to me. So that somebody, that subjective self, right now, that subjective self needs to authorize before the body can move sometimes. It depends really what kind of person you are and how much your emotions are in check. you know but I would say, how much you have tamed your inner animal, really. Um, Ultimately, oscillation between local, non-local, two sides of a coin. I think technically, maybe in eons, when I say we're going to advance beyond the language threshold, in other talks I've said that, where we are no longer going to be objects or subjects anymore. Energy has poetically graduated from shape and substancehood, you know, and uh, technically it's beyond the language threshold. There is no individual, so technically it's like we were unconsciously the world. Then we became consciously a self in a world. Okay, then we're going back to becoming consciously the world again. Right, so that's the power of really love, that it's like it's not rushing. The karma yoga is rushing. The Raja Yogi is not rushing, but is desiring. That means is like wants to see beyond the curtains too quick. Ultimately, these are just different dimensions of sight, and to treat your eyes as if they have never existed here before may technically rares them as unique as an extraterrestrial artifact. Imagine found by an archaeologist, but instead this extraterrestrial artifact, it's like you're the most unique and strange species here. So anyways, I think the pictures were painted enough. Emotions, and even the golden rule, it's pointing to a self-reflective analysis of the other, where it's as if the person's like, okay, I could be in that bad situation, so why? Or even if you're a Buddhist, you're freaking out even more. You're like, oh my god, I mean, come back into this world again. So it becomes one of those situations where you want to, like, not make a mess. For example, not walk with muddy boots in the temple that you're going to return to, for example, right? So let your eyes be free before a sense of self or a sense of world could move. The body's freedom, it needs space to move. The mind's freedom, it requires space to be. So the body needs to literally do something to be alive. The mind literally needs to be something to have some sort of value to itself. Now, let's say the mind doesn't move, like these yogis who go into the mountains and they sit there and just meditate for years. Like, so it becomes one of those things where for them, uh, I don't know, on some level, like we need empathy, but on another mystical level, it's a renunciation of all that is not you. So if for example, emotions, you realize you're not your emotions, you might be like, why am I playing this emotional game then? Or you suddenly realize you're not a sort of archetype or egoic construct, and you're like, okay, why am I in this structure of thought right now? You know. So I don't know. I'm pretty much saying from a known view, we're going to the unknown. Love's strategy for the outer realms. For the inner realms, it has to be a new start, and technically call it novelty, call it unknown. I like the word unknown. It's just, I think it's the most relaxed word in the English language, you know? It's the only word in the dictionary that I'm like, all right, this word is cool, you know? Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. And if your inner flames show up, if there is some sort of disturbance or dissonance or some sort of resistance from your inner realms of the outer realms, best thing is to get rid of that resistance in the inner realms, you know? That means, let's say if you're like a pet owner and you suddenly get angry from a phone call, you know, you're like conscious enough to realize there's an animal there, and you don't just burst out going getting angry and freaking out like that, you know. So it becomes something where it's like in the inner realms the emotion was tamed or wielded or somehow controlled, right? I wouldn't say controlled, but like allowed, the flames were allowed to die down, you know, to stop. So I'm saying this simple thing that the person asking themselves in any moment, okay, how much of this moment requires an outer realm response? How much of it can I just keep it in the inner realms? Do you know? And really, to be able to do this, the person has to actually really also enjoy listening, which in another talk I'll hopefully touch on. So anyways, thanks for listening, guys. Blessings.